Hello, everyone. I'm Charlotte Beisel, Associate Editor of Branded Content here at GovExec, and your host of today's webcast, Ascend to Cloud, from Data Center End of Life to AI-Ready Modernization, sponsored by Clovity and Atlassian. Government agencies are hitting a critical inflection point as the legacy systems that power core services reach end of life. Delaying modernization only increases security risk, costs, and the likelihood of service disruptions. But with the right partners, this moment is also a chance to build a more resilient, future-ready foundation. Joining me today is Mike Allen, Deputy Commissioner for Technology of ITS for the New York State Department of Labor, as well as Matthew Graviss, Public Sector CTO for Atlassian, and Anuj Sachdeva, CEO of Clovity. Thank you all for being here. Now, I'd like to start with a quick round of introductions. Mike, let's start with you. If you could describe your role and give the audience a taste of your day-to-day, that would be great.
Sure. So as the Deputy Commissioner for Technology, or DCT, I'm coming up on 2 years now in this role supporting Department of Labor. And really, technology, it's all encompassing. So whether it's our mission critical unemployment insurance system to the printer in an office down the room here, I have responsibility for all of it and everything that connects it and makes that work. And so I work regularly from just an operations perspective on those things, but also working with our business leaders, our commissioners, other directors that have problems, and they're trying to solution those problems. So myself to work on collaborating, ensuring we can provide a secure, something that meets the data integrities, providing privacy standards, and make sure that those solutions are, when implemented, are done in a way that meets our security policy for New York State. And so it's a very large role that is keeping you busy day in and day out.
Well, I'm happy to have you here. Matthew, let's go to you. What about you at your role in Atlassian?
Charlotte, awesome to be with you today. Great to be with Mike and Anuj on the panel. And despite the weather being outside, fun to be inside and talking to all of you and the viewership, of course. So I'm the CTO here at Atlassian for the public sector, really focused on leveling up the engagement of our team to senior leaders across the public sector community, which includes state, local, higher ed, and Fed. I'm about a week away from the 1-year mark at Atlassian after spending 17 years in the federal government, worked at the State Department, Homeland, and several other places. So bringing that experience to bear here today as well.
Cool. Well, congrats on the almost anniversary.
Thank you.
Anuj, let's round out with you. Tell us about your role at Clovity.
First of all, thank you, Charlotte, for hosting us today. Mike, I have to say, I don't want to be in your shoes given the portfolio you have. And Matt, as always, I would say that there's a lot to learn from your experience, actually, the decades of experience you have. I'm the chief executive here at Clovity. We actually focus very much on the cloud modernization, which is a topic today. And then as you can see, with the cloud modernization is now directly proportional to AI and how AI and sort of modernization fits together. And lastly, we focus a lot on the service management aspect of it, how to deliver a good customer service. And as I said, my day-to-day is very, very narrow, not as elaborative as Mike and Matt. Focus is all around customer problems. How do you sort of tie the customer problems to actually business solutions we offer? And I'll get to learn a lot from executives like Mike. It's actually fun, especially in the era of AI, because pretty much every single thing is changing now, from back office to front office to customer experience. And that's kind of where we keep evolving our thoughts and keep learning. Back to you, Scarlett.
Great. Well, thank you. I'm really excited to have you all here. And like you said, Mike has quite the shoes to fill, although I think this week they are more like snow boots. So Mike, let's get this kicked off. I'll start with you. The reason we are here, we know legacy systems are nearing the end of life. So I'm hoping you can talk about the pressures that state and local agencies are feeling most acutely right now, whether it's security and performance or just simply keeping operations running. How do you see that urgency shaping agencies' priorities?
Yeah, it's very difficult right now to support some of our aging systems. Those COBOL developers, assembler developers, I mean, they are extremely difficult to find. But a lot of the stuff that we have today still needs them. And so it's a resource that's dwindling. It's a resource that You can't hire really anywhere. It's not getting trained or skilled. People aren't skilling up into COBOL these days. So it's definitely put a lot of pressure and urgency on us to find a new path forward. Where can we build? Where can we move away from these areas? There's also a lot of security concerns around them. They're not meeting the newer standards that are coming out. We can't implement, certain things. And so there's a lot of risk that we're now managing in addition to it. So it definitely motivated us to find a new path forward, right? Where can we move our systems? Because not only do we have those worries, I have outside worries, right? We have the newer individuals. People expect things. I can pick up my phone. I know exactly what's going on, where I am in the queue, where am I in the process, and why isn't this done already? So the expectations are really pushing on us as well to find a new path forward. And it's just really hard when you have some of these legacy systems that are monolithic, that go back decades, that are older than me. And not to mention, there's only billions upon billions of records of data here that have been slapped together, been not necessarily used in the most standardized way. And so it becomes a real problem now as we try to figure out, well, how can we make this happen? And a lot of my predecessors have done a great job, right? And I'll say creating some Frankensteins that work, that show like, hey, we made a lot of progress, but a lot of this underlying infrastructure, it's still the same stuff. I had an old manager used to say, we just put lipstick on a pig. Yeah, it looks great, but it's not really solving the root cause problem. So now as we try to modernize, a lot of this technical debt is rearing its head, and it can cause a lot of difficulty for us as we try to now figure out, well, who's the COBOL developer, who's someone that can look at this stuff and understand what's been built over these last 40 years, and how can we move it forward? So it's definitely been a very interesting experience as we look at how can we modernize our systems. The business is more important now than ever to really understand their own business line, because we have to have technical folks that are just really understanding the technical components of the legacy or the new systems. So it's also opened up new partnerships, I'll say, with us, a lot more collaboration. And it's become a very different world than I would say than where I learned as a green developer first out of college versus where we are today. It's a different experience as we try to modernize. And it's exciting, but it's got some real challenges that have been difficult for us to navigate as an organization.
Matthew, I'm curious, with your 17 years of experience, did any of that resonate? I'm sure, we've seen a lot of tech changes, over those 17 years, and it feels like you're constantly having to try to keep up. I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the age-old story of, you bring back the retired developer because you pay them $100,000 and $1 for the time, and $100,000 knowing where the fix is. That's definitely a major challenge, and it's something that all the folks that are in Mike's position are dealing with across the board: aging systems, and rationalizing that with the expectations of citizens and employees who have technology on their phones, that are on their laptops, ready and available, and you're getting an answer. It's like an on-demand society that we're living in. That said, I think the opportunity is huge, and certainly the advancements in technology over the last few years, Gen AI in particular, is creating opportunities to migrate faster, to modernize quicker, and to deliver a better citizen experience using the latest and greatest technology.
Great. And so, in a lot of my conversations that I have with folks like you guys, we're talking about visibility. And a lot of the technology that we're leveraging right now is so that we can sort of understand our data. You can't use what you don't understand. You can't understand what you can't see. So Matthew, I want to stick with you on this one, sort of understanding how that heightened visibility is changing decision-making at the leadership level. And maybe we could talk a little bit about the role of public-private partnership and how that's helping to turn insight to even more effective service management.
Yeah, Charlotte, that's great. I mean, Mike talked about partnerships a little bit too. What I learned over my career is, and Mike may have experienced this too, and Anuj certainly as his company's grown, like there's a fundamental difference between leading a team of 10 or 40 or 80 people and leading a team of 100, 200, 500,000, et cetera. Like when you get to a certain scale, even the best team in the world will fall short if they're not working on the right things, whether that's alignment to agency priorities, administration priorities, things like that. And so at that senior leader level, it's less about managing effort and it's more about managing alignment. Or do you have the right folks working on the right things, and where's your talent pool and things like that. At the State Department, just to give you an example, I worked with we were a team that got brought in to solve some challenges that were facing the organization in various pockets. And one was on the payroll desk, where they had over 10,000 payroll support tickets in their backlog. And if there's one thing that you need agencies to do, or any employer for that matter to do, it's pay your people, right? And so significant issue, and leadership initially assumed that the payroll system itself was broken, right? When we went in and started diving in, and crafting more visibility across payroll, across HR, across service management, we saw something very different. You saw a team that was like working incredibly hard, but the work was fragmented and the processes weren't clear. The priorities weren't aligned to the resources and things like that. And so payroll is kind of where the pain showed up, but workflow and prioritization were really the root causes. So I think that's where having visibility where leaders can act in real time instead of waiting weeks or months for reports to come out, maybe through a BI, a business intelligence layer, or lagging report, that becomes really important. On the partnership side, like we talked about visibility, that alone's not enough. You've got to have shared ownership. I think that's really important. I really focused on a badgeless environment, where it didn't matter whether you were a government employee or a services company employee or a product company employee. Like, I wanted the best and brightest working on the same mission and aligned to the priorities that I cared most about. And at scale, like, modernization only really works when everyone's accountable and has those shared outcomes. And so I think those are the two pieces of it: the shared visibility, shared accountability, shared ownership, are critical for being a senior executive and steering a large team to tackle the things that matter most to an agency.
Great. Anuj, let's shift over to you for a moment. We're talking about end of life, we're talking about migration, but what does an actual secure, well-planned migration actually look like when we're talking about state and local agencies? And maybe we can talk about sort of the balance that agencies are expected to strike, between protecting data integrity, maintaining audit readiness, and avoiding disruptions to day-to-day operations.
Yeah, no, Scarlett, I would love to address that, but actually, maybe I can start in reverse, like Matt and Mike said, right?
Yeah.
Think about it this way: the way, when you do a migration or any sort of modernization for that matter, ROI is very critical, and that's kind of, Matt gave a very good example. See, now what has happened is, as you migrate, and I'll come to the point, but eventually, the the way the service flows happen now with the help of AI, you can almost reduce your, like the example with Matt was giving about payroll or HR. You can almost make the resolution of the queries can actually 50% of can be resolved touchless. It doesn't even reach the agents or the HR guys, right? And that's kind of where the legacy modernization or the migration comes in. Specific to what you're asking now, think about it. So number one component is, when it comes to any migration, is a phased approach, because there could be systems, like Mike mentioned, like decades old system which are very legacy, lots of junk data or lots of redundant data. And then there could be systems which have evolved in last decade or so. One is the most important critical part is the phased approach. Like, you break down the systems into sort of what are the old systems, what is the end of life on those, right? Because some systems are just can't evolve, and what are the sort of the newer system, and that's kind of what you put together as a phased approach. I think the second key component which matters the most is security, because there is a fear mostly in the SLED circle that, hey, we are going away from the control of the data center to cloud, right? I know lots have evolved in SaaS, but there's still that fear of data, right? Whether it is NIST compliance, whether it is FedRAMP compliant. So it's very, very critical keeping the security framework in mind, right? Whether you are making sure it's sort of the data at rest, data and move, the zero trust factor, all of that has to be factored in before you start sort of embarking on the migration journey. Because at times, again, we are now looking at sort of a lot of SLED agencies which actually want hybrid approach as well. So that's another thing which has to be taken into consideration, because a lot of times the data can still sit within the agency, part of it, and part of it can move. And then, like I called out in the phased approach, end of life is a critical component. So you definitely want to prioritize those things and do a more phased sort of migration. And ultimately, the audit readiness as sort of will be another component. As you go through this, right, you got to make sure there is enough sort of nuts and bolts to track in an event the migration doesn't go successfully, or have a sort of a plan B is very critical, because the old systems can be tough. Because I think migration is a very broad term, and there's so much nuance to it which organization underestimate, right? It's not just a data move, it's actually a process move, a change move, a consolidation, right? You are pretty much going from 20 systems to probably 5 systems, right? So there's a huge process change which you have to do. And then the other point is, how do you make sure the disruption is minimal, right? Because obviously business is going on, and that's kind of where, again, the planning of doing the cutovers in the sort of the non-peak hours, making sure there is a trial happening in a sandbox environment, in the lower environment, that becomes super critical. And then the last but which is very, very critical, and I'm sure Mike will agree, the stakeholder alignment. Because now you're talking about your citizens getting impacted, your internal users getting impacted. So it's very critical to bring all of those together. I think that's kind of the bringing the whole thing together is where the migration can be deemed successful.
I
Yeah,
mean,
sorry.
oh
Matthew?
no, I was just going to jump in with a news like on the security front. If there's one thing I learned, it was like become best friends with the security team, get them involved as early as possible, like earlier than they even think they need to be involved. Like with your phases of migration advice. I mean, security is not a phase, right? It's something where you got to have those fixed, and same goes for privacy, legal, and the other elements that you have to bring in. Get them involved like as early as possible. I mean, we at State we launched an AI steering committee, and it was like everybody who could slow down modernization. No offense to anybody in that field, but anybody who could slow down modernization, like bring them onto the team as fast as possible, as early as possible, and go from there. And then the other thing, just it's amazing how a lot of migrations fail because they tend to try to replicate the old ways of doing business in the new technology, and not engaging the stakeholder community like Anuj was talking about, and really understanding what the new business requirements are, and what technology can do that may now that it couldn't do 20 years ago, that may shape how you migrate, how you modernize. Really, really important.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on that, Matt. Don't forget about our audit teams and compliance teams. Those are hugely important because they do change what you can and can't do in a system potentially, or what the logging requirements are, right? To make sure you're not missing any of those key components. And then, yeah, I thought exactly the same way you did when it came to the system. Wow, I just blanked on what you were talking about a second ago. When it comes to our processes, making sure that we're able to. I'm going to say I'm going to pause because I can't remember.
That you're not just replicating the old way of doing it.
Right. We're not going, okay. Yes, exactly. Because that's one of the biggest things. People get stuck in. So when you're bringing the business side in particular, right, you want to make sure you're bringing the people that are thinking forward, right? They're the ones that are questioning, well, why do I have to go press A to B to C, right? Why can't I just go A to C, right? Is there a regulation in the way? Is there a law in the way? Is there a real reason, right? Other than just that's just how we've been doing it for 20 years, and that's just the way we do things. And so it's definitely important to reevaluate, take that breath when you're looking at modernization is don't think new, think why. And that's how you're going to be successful. And that spurs on great opportunities, right? To figure out, well, then, hey, there is technology here that can now maybe do those things, or there's something that can assist you to become real successful. So it's definitely important. And I can't emphasize that enough. Having the right business partner or partners in that room are really instrumental, because at the end of the day, I'm a technician. You tell me the problem, I'll find your solution. But I don't know your business like you know your business. So you need to tell me really what that is. And that business also is, the external customer, right? Those that you're using your stuff, not just internal, but also your external people as well.
Yeah. No, Mike, I totally agree. One thing I've noticed is often that people underestimate, or agencies underestimate migration. Migration is nothing short of process transformation and, like you said, modernization. And that's where the sort of the integration of business users and tech has to come together. Because I mean, it's ultimately leading to a process change for good, right? So that's, I mean, totally, I agree with you.
Yeah, it's that idea of it's not just a technology change, it's a culture change. And getting people on board is the most important part, because when people start taking shortcuts, that's when the real risks start to emerge. And I'm glad we're on this topic of the phased approach. I want to keep pulling on that thread a little bit. Mike, I want to acknowledge that the big bang cut over isn't always realistic, especially for maybe state and local agencies who are working with limited resources, limited budgets, or maybe they just spent their budget on modernizing 10 years ago, and now we're in a whole new era of new technology. So I'm curious, from your perspective, what lessons have emerged from migrations that took this phased approach that we're talking about? And maybe there are particular business units where you've seen that strategy pay off. I'm curious about your perspective there.
Yeah. Big bangs to me are really last resort, right? You don't really want to go down that path. It's very hard on the organization when it comes to change management. It's very impactful to your constituents or those that are using the system. And it may take years upon years sometimes in order to get that big win. And it's very short lived. And the reality is today, people don't really have the appetite. Budget directors don't have the appetite. Constituents, customers, they don't have the appetite for that, right? They need something now. So, as Anuj talked about earlier, breaking things into phases, like that's how you have to do it. But it's not just having, oh, well, great, I have 5 phases, but it's still going to take me 5 years. It's really breaking things down into the smallest component that you can go live with, right? What is your MVP, right? What can you actually go live with that shows progress forward? And then you have something you can keep building on, right? And you can start having more and quicker and more wins along the way. And so you can leverage those agile or scrum methodologies for projects, and you can start really bolting onto those new systems. And it's important you take a break and think about your solutions, not just, this is monolithic application system I'm developing, but like break it apart, create products, right? Individualize things. So that way you can start having, again, smaller pieces, which then you can start building quick wins on. And that allows you and gives you almost cover, I would say, for those long running project tasks, because some of these things are going to take years: infrastructure, end of life activities, data migration or data transformation, data cleansing. When you've got billions upon billions of records that you have to move that came from 100 different systems, and now you have to put them all into one system, it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of testing. And so by creating little products, creating a small MVP that you can get out there, it earns you goodwill. It earns you time to show, hey, we're actually building something here. You just didn't give us, $1 million and got nothing, right? You actually have something you can stand on. And then that starts smoothing over things, right? When it comes to budget directors, when you go to commissioners, business, external, counterparts that are trying to use the thing that you're building, right? They see things are changing, things are happening. Their concerns are now heard, and it starts making you show progress, right? And that's when you have progress, you have success. So inevitably, when a project does slide because of something unexpected, something you couldn't account for, you have cover because you delivered something. And I've had great success in being able to do that. I think one of my previous agencies that supported filling out their modernization program that went for 5-6 years was figuring out, well, what is this big thing? We know this thing is going to take 3-4 years to get to where you want to land. what parts of this can we pull out? Does it really need to be one big system? Just because it was one big system for the last 10 years doesn't mean it should be one big system today. And so being able to work with the business to strategize around that, talking to the subject technical SMEs that have been around for that decade, right? Things that they wanted to do, they just couldn't, right? Figuring out how can we break this up to make it more modular, because that also gives us more flexibility when it comes to new technology stacks that are coming out, or new features, like whether it's AI is a good plugin, right? Or how can I use this? It becomes a lot easier to replace when it's already been broken up to be exchange. You can replace it in the future. You're kind of future-proofing yourself, or at least making the next evolution, when eventually you have to change something again in the future, it's a lot more palatable, right? You're not looking at a $100 million project, you're looking at a $10 million project. And those are the things that you really need to start planning through. And business people get it, right? The commissioners, the directors, they get it. They see it. If you can explain it and show it, that's what they want. And so if you can show them what they already want, it becomes a lot easier conversation. And I've been able to have a lot of success by just really doing that and making that the priority. If you're aligned with the business and their priority and you're giving them something, they're always going to take something over nothing. And so they're always very happy about that. And so I've seen a lot of progress and a lot of strategy that is really focused on those type of things when we're talking those monolithic systems that we're trying to modernize.
Yeah, no, I just go on, Scarlett. Sorry.
No, Anuj, what do you want to add?
No. I just wanted to add one point here. I think the number one thing, like Mike said, sort of the end result, right? See, the biggest end result now, what we're seeing in a lot of agencies as they're modernizing or embarking on this journey, is also in some ways, because of the AI, a lot of things are getting resolved more in an automated fashion, which also is leading to repurposing the field into more productive jobs, right? That's directly proportional to gains as well, right? You sort of look, I mean, if you think about it, you don't need as many agents and you can route them to do something better, right? So that's also straight up value which these modernization initiatives are actually now kicking in.
Yeah, I think it's that idea of sort of freeing up people to do the work that requires more of that human touch. I think that's a huge value for anybody, especially government, who, like I said, are constantly battling with limited resources and higher expectations to move a lot faster. So continuing on with that idea, Matthew, we can't really talk about modernization without talking about AI. Where are you seeing AI making the biggest impact today, and where do you think it has the most potential moving forward?
Oh, wow, AI. Can't have a panel without AI, right? Yeah, so let's take a step back and say what has the journey been for all of us in the Gen AI space? And I think a lot of us followed a similar journey for the agencies that we were in when Gen AI first came out. Like, we had employees that started dabbling with the public tools, and us in the enterprise were like, oh, we got to put guardrails around it. We got to make sure that people aren't using it in an inappropriate way. And so then we all went to okay, we got to build our own chatbot or onboard our own chatbot, right? We had to find a way to bring the capability in, so we had the security wrapper around it. And you started to see a little bit of gains in efficiency, but not enough. I think where I'm starting to see where we were heading when I was in government, but where I'm starting to see customers of Atlassian benefit from Gen AI is moving toward having AI built directly into where the employees are already working. I think that's where you're going to see bigger gains. And most of that value isn't coming from like a standalone chatbot. It's coming from AI embedded in everyday workflows, like AI for migration planning or prioritizing the backlog, or assigning work to the right teams that have the capacity and the skill set. You can do all those in a streamlined fashion. And right now, so AI is giving time back. I think where we go next is going to be even more important, and that's that once leaders, like in Mike's position, start seeing where the time is being saved, AI starts helping answer a harder question, which is like, what should we do with that capacity? And that's when AI shifts from efficiency to effectiveness, where it's from making people faster to helping organizations make better decisions, focus on what matters most, and back to the visibility that we talked about earlier in the conversation.
Mike, not to put you on the spot, but I noticed that resonated with you. Are there any areas, within your own organization where you've seen AI making an impact? Anywhere that you see potential for in the future?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's become a very helpful tool. I'd say internally, especially for our employees, when there's very large policy documents, when you're trying to understand maybe a new law standard, whatever's coming out, right? Can I throw it into something, get a podcast version of it, right? Or if just becoming more clear and more understandable in maybe my writing, right? People don't write like they used to, we'll say, long ago. And so, or people are very maybe too verbose, right? There's so much content. Can I simplify this, right? So it becomes more understandable and people are more efficient. So there's less back and forth. So it's clearer. So we definitely see a lot of use in internal, just becoming more business, I'll say, and maybe administrative AI type activities just to help ourselves, talk and communicate more effectively. But also, I think it was Anuj, I can't remember, Matt. But even when it comes to just some of the basic stuff, common, frequently asked questions, right? Can we use those, AI sets to answer those things, right? Instead of a person's time, can we still give the consumer something they want, but in a way that maybe is less costly to the state, but it handles both things. So it's definitely something we're exploring more. We're continuing to see the AI and as it kind of shapes what makes sense, as well as understanding what the consumer is willing to tolerate, right? And I think that's going to be a very interesting thing. It's one thing as a business person, but it's different if you're a New York resident and you're trying to make a phone call into the Department of Labor. You may want to talk to a person. You really don't want to ever talk to someone that's not a person. And so trying to find the balance between all of those things is a struggle, right? And it's one of those we're trying to see what we can do so we can make the most benefit to everyone, whether you're the taxpayer or you're the user of the system.
Yeah. No, I just want to add one thing here, Mike. What I honestly, and I don't even know when this all started, because right now I feel like it's like so part of our life now that I don't know what I'll do without it, right? Because it's like, especially the back office stuff, right? I mean, like the way things have automated and in such a quick order, it's it's saved so much time. I mean, right, whether, like you said, right, whether it's from smallest thing like meeting notes or create, I mean, and these AI tools are so robust and so sort of easy to learn that you can create your orchestration engine, which used to be like months project back in like 2000, right? I mean, I could write an orchestrator myself now just by dragging few things, right? So honestly, I mean, the way it's evolving, I mean, it's going to be incredible. I know there's a little bit of this reservation around change management, honestly, but it's good for the humanity. It's good for the way it's headed. It's good for the citizens in the SLED circle. It's good for the sort of the productivity of the back office staff. It's just now the question of adoption, basically, and keep unleashing it, basically.
It's like, just to contrast, like having been in government and now in industry, and Mike knows what is the employee onboarding experience in government. It is not the smoothest thing in a lot of places. And when I got to this job, the job announcement was based on the position description. The position description, using Gen AI, drove recommended videos that I should watch based on, for my role, which Confluence pages I should look at, based on the org chart and integration there. It was like, here are the people that you should meet. Here's your peer group. Here are folks that are involved in the public sector. Like, that was all laid out in a very cohesive fashion that would have taken weeks for somebody to manually assemble. So the opportunity is there, and now it's about bringing a lot of what we've learned inside to more customers and partners.
Yeah, totally.
It's almost funny to imagine reading, hundreds and thousands of pages of policy yourself now that you can have, maybe a bot describe and summarize the key points. I can't even imagine how many people plugged in the National Defense Strategy into their bot this morning when they saw it come out. So
that's I think a great point, right? And I think that's impacted how we need to provide services too. because that's the expectation. Is people don't want a 1,000-page document. They just want, give me the highlight, give me the thing I need to know. Why am I reading all this extra stuff? Don't you know who I am? Can't you just give me what the service is that I'm here for? Don't you already know that? Why do I need to tell you what I want? And so there's a lot of anticipation. People want that type of nice self-service these days of, here it is, feed it to me, give it to me, right? And so that's impacted a lot of our design decisions now going forward. And we have to really think about that. And all that comes back to data to me. So you got to have that good data, because you can potentially answer those questions. We might be able to do it offline today through different data reports and data analytics, and we pull this together, right? We can create certain understandings of this demographic, and this is probably what they want based on percentages. But that expectation is now real time, right? Why can't I have that now? I have improved customer experience, because that's really what it's driving towards. Is how can I provide that top tier customer experience to my user, whether it's an internal person or an external person, a business, the citizen, it doesn't really matter. That is what they want. And so that now impacts our modernization. But it's really hard when you got data from 100 different systems that doesn't really fit well together. And that really impacts a lot of our modernization. It impacts how we do AI, or what you can or can't do with AI. But the expectation is still here in the business to do those things, or from the external parties. And how can you deliver that with your system? And it definitely impacts our modernization, how we think about things, how we try to move things forward. It's definitely a big investment, though, and it's hard,
Yeah.
really hard.
So no, Mike, actually, you just gave me a deja vu moment here. Excellent point. I was actually talking to a customer, and they're like, "Look, we want to implement AI. We want to do sort of how can we bring it to the organization?" I mean, and we started talking to them, do a discovery call with them, and the next thing we know is they have so much legacy data, and that's when the CIO realized that the amount of cleanup he has to do, right, to actually use the AI is phenomenal. Because a lot of times people want to adopt it, the intention is correct, but there's the data cleanup, whether you're doing a modernization effort, is huge. Because if you don't have clean data, AI is not going to do anything for you, right? It's as good as nothing. I mean, you can't even do, like, we talk about LLMs and all of that. It's all boils down to clean data. The more clean the data is, the more AI can be adopted in any organization. And I think that there's a little bit of an awareness which is also getting created, especially in the SLED circle, because everybody wants to adopt it, but there's an effort of modernization which has to take place before it's adopted.
There's an analogy back to like when business intelligence and dashboards was at its peak. It's still so important, don't get me wrong, but those of us building those kind of things, we used to say, like, it takes $1,000 to build the dashboard and $1 million to get the data right. And the same is true for AI. Same is true.
Yeah, totally.
So, Anuj, I want to get back to a point that you were talking about earlier, which is sort of preparing teams for this sort of shift. Technology is only part of the equation, but how can agencies prepare their teams to adapt to new cloud and AI-enabled environments? And maybe if you could highlight some skills or roles. We talked about some mindset shifts that are proving to be the most important during modernization.
The first thing which comes to my mind on this is agility over rigidity. I think that's kind of where the fundamental is, because in order to adopt the team, the SLED, or any organization, commercial SLED, public sector, they all have to be agile. Because now it's a huge change we are seeing, right? I mean, it's almost the same change we saw when things moved to SaaS, right? I mean, there was a time that people didn't wanted to go to SaaS, and then obviously they eventually adopted as SaaS policies got sort of more mature, and cybersecurity sort of is much more stringent now. So one, I mean, there's an upskill of in sort of I would say upskill of talent in terms of the initiatives like the cloud fundamentals. Anybody who's getting adopting to the AI part of it, the cloud fundamentals are going to be very important. That's kind of the starting point, I would say. And then the next point is going to be like, okay, once you know that, then the leveraging the data, right? How do you leverage in your best interest? Most people, what they're missing right now is AI is very useful if you spend time on like giving the right feed to it and then getting the right output. It's not like it's not just about asking a question. It's asking a question intelligently is as critical as just asking a question, right? So the more you feed in with what's in your thought, the more AI starts to respond as a human. I mean, to be very honest, that's kind of where the interaction starts. So the upskill to cloud fundamentals and how to use it effectively is going to be key. The other point you just asked on the roles, definitely I think that anything around data stewards, sort of data science, that's going to be critical now going into it, because and that's where most of the folks who traditionally used to be data analysts or data engineers back in the day, like Matt said, creating a dashboard, those guys can easily adopt to going into the zone of sort of being the stewards of the organization. And then the other key aspect is the mindset change, right? Because the challenge is people are seeing AI as a threat, but we should look at AI as actually a positive thing that you can learn more or you can extract more out of it. You can be more productive. So fundamentally, the organizations have to start embarking that this is not a threat. This is actually for the betterment of the whole sort of organization. You can actually do better jobs in a much faster manner. Now that leads to change management, and that's kind of where the folks like Mike, I mean, the messaging has to go in the right way, that yes, there is a change, and change, as we know, for humans is painful, but the messaging of the change has to be more done in a phased manner, that this is not a change which is painful. This is a change which will help to not only the citizens but also internally. And finally, obviously, the tools, right? Tools are going to be very critical. So the more tools we can give to the organization or to the staff, the better it is for them to upskill. And then again, there should be a measurement feedback in terms of some sort of KPIs, because not everybody will scale at the same level. So again, you have to make sure it's a slow paced change, whereas some people are going at a rapid phase, but then there are elements of the folks in the organization who can go through in a sort of a little bit of a slow process to it, because adoption is going to be key. So you have to make sure all the wheels are greased properly.
Yeah, and I think that that's hugely important. And it's also important to recognize that not all AIs are built the same, right? There's a lot of different AI tools and products out there. Some are really good for taking large content. Some are really good just to help you do your day-to-day tasks, maybe create a draft email. There's others that are very specialized, maybe for creating like a RAG model that you want specifically to build knowledge into. There's all different types of thought things out there, right? Or maybe from the graphic side, you're creating actual imagery and graphic, right? There's different product suites. So it's important that you really understand what you're trying to do within your organization, or specific parts of your organization, more importantly, to say like, yeah, this is the tool set for you because we've tested it and made sure it checked all our security stuff, and you can use it in this way, and define like what are the acceptable uses for AI. And especially for New York State and ours is always having that human in the loop, right? And so it's never just going to be its own autonomous thing and it's taking over the world or it's taking over this. No, you're going to still be the very part of whatever that process is. Either you're the button person said that, yeah, I agree, that looks right, or you're going to be part of the downstream process that's looking at the much harder piece of the process that really ensures that it's being followed appropriately. So it has value. They all have different components, but it's very important within an organization that knowledge of understanding happens. So I know, like, whether it's creating an AI policy for your organization, making sure that it gets pushed down, we're doing that ourselves. It adds clarity. It takes some away the unease. There's always going to be unease, but it takes away some of the unease and gives something to stand on so that we can all move forward. Yeah, because this is such a rapidly changing area. It gives us something to at least lean on as we find our path forward.
Like to your original question, Charlotte, and to add to what Mike and Anuj is saying, like one of the roles that I think is so valuable is a communications role. I think that's what we're all saying. Like I had an AI workforce enablement team. And for every person, every employee who said, like, you're on this major initiative, you guys are just bombarding us too much with communication, there were 100 other people who still didn't know what we were talking about. Like there's a relentless amount of communication that has to happen. And the other thing I learned, kind of through trial and error is like in terms of adoption is don't trust me, the technologist, like trust people who are like you or people who you look up to. And so like in the case of the State Department, for me, it was getting ambassadors in different countries to record 30-second, 2-minute videos saying this is important. Here's how we're using it at our post. And then other missions across the world would be able to say, oh, well, Ambassador Doe in Honduras is doing this. So now, that gives me top cover to take some risk and try it here. So I think like strategically thinking about who those other leaders are, those big advocates are that can carry the message even further than the technology team can.
Well, my grandmother in upstate New York will be very happy, Mike, that there is a human in the loop, because she's always telling me about how AI is going to take over the world. And Anuj, to your previous point, it's dangerous when we don't know how to use it, when we don't know how to make it work for us. And sort of to your earlier point, it's garbage in, garbage out, right? It all matters on the input. So as we sort of upskill and train people to work with these systems, I think there's really room for improvement, but there's so much room for it to assist us, and especially in service delivery, right? People expect the same quality of experience as they do when they go on Amazon and they buy one thing and it says maybe you'd like a few of these other things, right? It's sort of that anticipating needs. So as much as that can help is great.
Exactly. I think the key is, like I always say internally to my staff, if now 10 people earlier can actually do the job of like pretty much their 3x productivity, right? And that's kind of the value comes in, right? And if the person starts to feel more valued, because obviously the 3x productivity, that's also where the organization change starts to happen and the motivation starts to happen, right? I mean, it's just about how you position it, right? I mean, I know there's connotations can go both ways, but the key is that's kind of how you motivate the staff and obviously the citizens, in like the example you gave, Scarlett. So
yeah, absolutely. All right, so before we kick it over to an audience Q&A, I'd like to zoom out a bit to the industry level, and I'd like you to each sort of speak to this point and share your perspectives. But Matthew, I'll start with you. As we discussed, as AI becomes more embedded in infrastructure and day-to-day operations, where do you see consolidation and modernization heading across state and local landscapes? And what shifts should agencies be preparing for now?
I mean, I think we've answered this a few times here and there through the conversation. Like, it is really hard to execute an AI strategy on top of fragmented infrastructure, and I think that's why there's a large push for more consolidation. It's often a necessary step. I think it kind of creates the foundation for taking advantage of the latest and greatest tech. Second, and this was said before, good AI rides on good data, and I saw this time and time again over the last few years. And in fact, like the promise of AI became a really valuable catalyst for a lot of the data governance work that we had been trying to do all along. And it's like, oh, now you want AI. Okay, great. It requires this amount of data governance. And all of a sudden, we had the deputy secretary send out a data inventory mandate. Things like that can actually happen because of the promise of AI. So I would encourage people to think about some of that less sexy, like infrastructure work, governance work, and data quality work, that kind of stuff. Present that kind of information as part of your AI roadmap, as part of your AI journey. And that way it actually gets some attention, it gets some funding and things like that. Governance is often hard to sell on its own. And I think Mike would agree with that, and Anuj as well. I think consolidation and modernization in general are heading from that nice to have to the norm. And I think the agencies that do well are going to be the ones that are truly focusing on data and platforms and workflows as shared foundations for all the modernization that they aim for in the future.
Anuj, what about you?
I would just sort of hint on two things, which sort of we touched, all three of us touched on. One, I think consolidation is happening at a system level, right? So earlier, which used to be, like I said, which used to be 20 systems, now are consolidating to three, right? So because there is the amalgamation of data, there's amalgamation sort of the we used to back in the day used to say MVP architecture, or sorry, MVC architecture. It's all coming sort of getting sort of overlapping now. So, and the second modernization or consolidation, which is happening at a process level, right? So now what's happening is the processes which used to have an intersection or overlap is now getting consolidated, because no longer an anomaly has to go three levels down to an agent. It can be actually solved through AI at the very top, right? Again, clean data. You pretty much, I mean, Scarlett, you gave a grandmother example. If she wants to reset her password on a bank account, she doesn't have to talk to an agent anymore, because it could be addressed by an AI, right? So that's kind of where the consolidation of processes are going to come, right? So those will be two things. I mean, I know there's a lot more around the preparation of it, the shifts, but pretty much those two, in my opinion, are going to be the key ones.
You don't even want to know how vulnerable my grandma's password is. It may as well be password 123 at this point. Maybe there's an exclamation point. Mike, was there anything that you see coming in terms of shifts that agencies should be preparing for? How are
Yeah.
you guys preparing?
Yeah, I think Anuj and Matt taught on it very well. Get your data house in order. Like that is number one. I know within my organization preaching that for about a year and a half now. With AI coming, like you can bring a vendor in and they'll show you the best thing, and that sales pitch is going to sell well. But the reality is, you got to bring your data to it. You're not bringing the sales data. The sales data is perfect. It's going to work every time. You're going to get 99, 100% accuracy. But your data is not that way. And so you're going to have to make that big investment, getting data governance strategies, getting people identified for all that. It takes a long time. You have to bring your legal reps in. You're going to have to bring other subject matter experts in to make determinations about the data. It takes a long time to do. And so you got to get a jump on it now. And then on the business side, all your business people, your trainings, your procedure documents, those things are awesome. And they're great for helping somebody that can intuitively understand maybe what you're saying in one document is the same as another document. AI doesn't get that. And so you got to have a real good business analyst type mindset. Maybe I'll say business analyst for AI, where you're going to look at that documentation and make sure it's accurate, make sure it's up to date, make sure it makes sense, that's linking, that's very clear, that there's a correlation between procedure one and procedure two, or this word and that word, because that's how you're going to show real value at it. But that all takes investment, and it's not the new shiny object, right? It's the old stuff. And you just got to make that better, because in order to pay the dividends of the future, what AI potentially can bring your agency or bring your process, it will pay itself in time, but you got to do the not fun, dirty work now. And it's something that you just have to get into, and it's hard to sell. But I think when you break it up, just we talked about earlier, creating chunks of stuff. So maybe find a small area within a business or organization where you can really do data governance, get something that maybe is a little more encapsulated, show value right out of it, right? That's how you're going to start getting those wins. You start showing that larger investment that needs to come behind it, that may take a couple of years to get fully, done. You can start making headway that way, and you can start showing success. And those are the things that, that we're trying to do, that I'm actively doing day in and day out, in addition to my other job of fixing printers and everything else. It's something that we have to do, because that is what is expected of us more, from our governmental leaders. It's expected of us from those that are using our services.
Mike, the fixing of printers is soon going to go to AI robots. So that's also is getting automated, actually.
I was recently at CES in Vegas, and I can say a lot of what we're doing is getting down to the robots. And hey,
Right.
I'll take it. So we've got a little bit of time. We've got a few extra minutes. We'll take some questions from the audience. We've got a couple in the chat, but first I'll pose it to all of you, but we'll start maybe with Mike. We talked a bit about where you see modernization headed, but is there any sort of initiatives that you're looking forward to, anything coming down the road that you're curious about, or anything that excites you right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, the AI component is probably our most interesting, whether it's talking about virtual agents, for or other services that can be offered to the public to get them answers in the channel that they prefer. And so, omni-channel is another, huge area of oversight. So when I talk to you or chat with you, it's also the same person understanding of who's picking up the phone I'm actually talking to, has all that background. And I can do that also with, somebody else, like a virtual agent, right? That can do that continuity between all of it. And that's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. It's something that we're pushing forward for as we modernize within labor, and making sure we have that one customer front door to make it easier for you to get to our services. And also, we know about you. We know what you want. We can try to answer your questions proactively. And so we can have that be a better experience for what you're trying to achieve with us.
Matthew, anything that you're looking forward to? Maybe I would say the next year, but we move so fast. So maybe in the next coming month.
Yeah, I mean, AI is awesome, and I've spent a lot of time understanding what our capabilities are, communicating with customers about AI. At the end of the day, I'm a systems engineer. Like when I go into a Chipotle, I analyze why the line's long. That's kind of the way my mind works. And so Jira Service Management is like the thing that I think about all the time. Is like the more people that know about Jira Service Management, the more they're going to realize like there's a very cost-effective way to bring service management, particularly outside of the IT space. Like the number of times I interacted with the chief counsel's office and HR and the ethics office, privacy, like all these, there's so many. It's amazing how many shared inboxes there still are. Jeez Louise. I mean, it's like wild. So that's probably like, if I look over the next 12 months, like that's what I'm super excited for more people to know about and more people to take advantage of. That's the big thing.
Great. And so we'll hit this one last question here. Anuj, I'll point it to you. We talked a little bit about how driving adoption can be one of the greatest challenges. Frankly, it's the culture change that we were talking about. But when you're bringing people on, when you're partnering with organizations, how do you get people ready and sort of ease their minds when it comes to this heavy lift that they're about to get into? How are you getting people to sort of drive adoption there?
See, my answer to that is go the traditional way, gamify it. What I mean is, I'll give you an example. Best Buy is one of our customers, right? And I always end up talking to some executives there. They have Geek Squad, as you know. And obviously, the stores keep adopting new products every week, right? iPhone keeps getting upgraded, laptops keeps getting upgraded. And I asked this thing, how do you keep all your sort of blue shirts, the guys in the store, so excited about this? And his answer was gamification. Basically, any change, any adoption, any knowledge within the organization can you can almost 4x it, 10x it by gamifying it. And what I mean by that is, one, you give them the tools and make it a little more intuitive, make it a little more video game fun for them to learn. And then as they go up the levels, right, you start to reward them with some incentives, right? So you are almost making the adoption of AI, and by giving them the tools, which is much more gamified, and it creates the excitement within the org. So not only you're upskilling them, you're also in some ways making it a fun exercise for them. That sort of is the most easiest way. I mean, I would say, and that's kind of how we have done it internally within our org, right? Just to create more buzz and excitement rather than making it more painful for them.
Great. Well, that brings us to the end of our time today. Mike, Matthew, Anuj, thank you so much for taking your time to share your insights with us. And thanks to everyone who joined us. We hope that today's conversation gave you practical takeaways you can apply within your own organizations. And just a quick reminder, today's program will be available on demand, so you can revisit the conversation whenever you'd like and share it with your colleagues who might benefit. On behalf of GovExec and our sponsors, Clovity and Atlassian, I am Charlotte Beisel, and we will see you next time. Thank you.